Okay, cool.
Yeah. I wish Twitch gave me the ability to multicast because I would take it, like
Yeah,
everywhere I could. I
you
guess I could
choose.
technically take it to Facebook too. I just never really
Yeah,
bother.
Facebook gaming. Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Dude, I actually had a contract with Facebook Gaming for like a couple months, and it was pretty
Yeah.
awesome. And
So did
then they
we. It
just,
was great.
yeah, and then they were like,
Oh, never mind.
yeah, we're not gonna do this actually. Yeah.
I could never understand what they were wanting
No.
because, like, I don't think they knew. And it was like, all right, I'm just good. So, what I ran into is like originally, at least it was like, okay, I want to make a certain amount of content. So, it's like, okay, we want you to hit, like, I think it was 180 minutes, but then it was like 180 minutes plus like almost a video every day, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I can do both, but if I was just going to go for something really cool, I was like, all right, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. I'm going to create something very unique. But then it was like, no, I need to hit publish all the time. So then it was just like it ended up becoming lowest common denominator content.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. And so when they pivoted, I was like, I would have pivoted a long time ago. I was just along for the ride, guys. Like, let's go.
Yeah, that was my criticism as well. There wasn't really enough communication going on to like, didn't know what they wanted. They were just like, we're done. I was like, all right, cool. Can I any like advice like beforehand? Like, no, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, what do you want? We don't know. It's like,
yeah, but I think Facebook's having a bit of trouble right now because they like they want to like do like multiple different things, and like the Facebook users are like typically like 45-year-old women. So, yeah, it's like a much older graphic, which is fine.
Right.
It's okay to have an older demographic, but I think they want that TikTok crowd.
Well, and that's what they're going with now. So it's like all the things all about the YouTube shorts and that easily understandable content. And I think there's verticals for all forms of content, right? Like the content creation, I guess, mini game is making content and then finding ways to take that and turn it into something that anybody can enjoy in any kind of format and style. So like we've been editor Jack, actually, like I think he's your editor. Or I did some work for you. So I ended up hiring him because I just got a new job and I'm like, I can't edit my own videos now. I am short on time, which is great. It's a good problem to have. And so he's been taking these things and chunking them into like shorts. And I'm like, that's great. This is exactly what I want. Cause then it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I got two of my Jack in the chat I see there, and Gamgee as well. Both of them helping me stay sane by managing my workload. Because man, if I had to do everything on my own, it'd be pretty nuts. Like trying to edit, and then all the emails and stuff Gamgee responds to and gets deals set up.
Dude. Yeah, I'm not at that size yet. I'm good at creating channels, and like I have not hit that silver play button yet on any of them, but across like all of them, it's like I have a large number of subscribers that are all very different, but it's like one of these days, then I'll maybe get that big if I could get, having somebody just to respond to emails, because I turned down like I've turned down every sponsorship, but I don't know if any of the sponsorships are valid anyway. So it's like my default answer is just like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't need to mess with you guys. And then, that's where I exist in. How long you been doing the YouTube thing?
So
we're looking
technically
like we're talking to each other.
My YouTube, I made my YouTube channel in 2007. It's pretty damn old. But I didn't upload my first video until 2012. And funny enough, it was a tutorial on how to duplicate gold in a game called Two Worlds. So, I don't know if you've heard of Two Worlds. It was a interesting game. I think it was a good one. I liked it, but it was pretty corny. You were like I can't remember the name of the main character, but his sister was like stolen by some demon cult or whatever, and then you have to go get them back. And yeah, it was good fun though. Well,
Gamgee is offering their services to help admin for me as well. So just following in the Baggins footsteps unintentionally, but I love making guide videos and things like that, which is a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk to you about New World, because like it's so weird, because it's like it was massive, and then it was like everybody was like it's dead, which that was a very amusing for me because it was like gamers just don't. The people who are saying that in my mind just don't understand gaming, and they just understand algorithms, or they're a victim of it.
Yeah, people like that. But the dead game like comes out so fast these days. It's like I'm pretty sure for the longest time like Overwatch and Fortnite have been like a dead game as well. But despite still having like a pretty damn huge player base, but as soon as you lose any players whatsoever, it's like a dead game. But I think New World right now is like I think we're almost in the top 10 on Steam, which is pretty awesome.
We hit New World hit top 10 on Brimstone's launch.
Yeah,
it was number 9.
It's pretty awesome.
Oh, dude, that's the other thing. It's like a lot of people talk about like percentage loss, but they don't then factor out just hype, because hype numbers aren't real numbers. We know that the numbers for New World will go down.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Lost Ark, for example. Like Lost Ark, like what they had like 1 million concurrent, but now it's only at 176. And I say only 176,000 people playing it right now. Like that's an insanely good number. But for some people were like, oh, that's dead, because it had 1,324,000 and it's only 176. So it's like lost 90% of its player base. But let's be honest, like the people that drop off in the first 2 months, that wasn't the player base.
It wasn't the player base.
That was the hype bubble. The player base is what we have now. And New World having a player base of like 50, 60K, that's amazing. And it's gonna go up, I think. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I don't know how you feel, but fresh start being like just around the corner, it's gonna be I think we're gonna see some pretty crazy numbers.
Well, on that note, let's actually just kick off the podcast because we've technically already started it, but I haven't got to do a killer intro with my my raspy voice. I had to do it one video and I had to do it like talking like Alex Jones just so that I could actually like not sound like my voice. I lost my voice, and that really did upset some people. And then I just laughed at that. I was like, that is one reason that like those comments that I got, because I was like, well, guys, I lost my voice, or I could talk to you like this. It's like because people were upset by just that aspect. I was like, that's one reason I will not post my stand-up online. I've been doing stand-up, absolutely having a great time with it. But I'm like, people are like, you gonna post it online? I'm like, absolutely not, because I'm gonna get so much hate. It's just not even worth it. All right, let's kick this show into high order, and let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Epic Loot Radio podcast. My name is Brian, and joining me today is BagginsTV. We're going to be talking about New World, its rise, its fall, its continual rise again, despite what people and nerds online like to say and confuse. And so there's going to be a big deep dive into the latest release of Brimstone. But if you guys haven't been following BagginsTV, like this guy is incredible. Both as I've been lurking on your streams for at least the last 9 months. That's how I discovered you over on Twitch. And then all of a sudden, your videos on YouTube started getting recommended to me as well. So I actually am so glad that you're able to make time for me today, because I'm a huge fan of the content and what you do. And your numbers on Twitch, if we just want to take a moment, awesome numbers. Like, it's so exciting when you see drops. Like, I saw you over 10K, and that is, in my mind, just mind blowing. Like, how has this this second launch, in a way, been for you and your content, and maybe even your mental health in terms of what you do for a living?
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. You never I've been streaming since like 2016, and you never really know what like the next month has in store, because when you like tie yourself, like obviously you create your own content, you are independent of yourself, but you're still creating content on a game, and if that game is going down, and it feels like you're going down with it, and you're like losing popularity. Like, it's very streaming and stuff can be a bit taxing mentally, because when you lose some members of your audience, it feels like you're losing, that they're not interested in anymore. And it's not that they're not interested in you, it's the game, but like dividing that can be like pretty torturous. But yeah, now things are up. Obviously feels better, man. Feels good, man. And let's just hope that it can stay that way. I think it will plateau and like sort of peak out, but day one of Twitch drops it's always a good time to be streaming. Yeah. The first day the drops come out.
Yeah. Oh, dude, Twitch drops, you can see it in the stream charts. So one of the things I like to do is I love to dive in just to the analytics and understand the algorithms and essentially the culture around gaming. And I think numbers, they tell a real interesting story. And my philosophy about them is I feel a lot of content creators don't understand what numbers are. Like they misread the numbers. They misspeak. We saw a lot of New World dead, New World's failing. This game, is absolutely, like it's in the garbage and it's not going to ever come back. And you hear this thing, and I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at what people are saying, and it's like I'm coming to a completely different conclusion. It's like, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, but the hype within, like any game, like right now there's a hype cycle going on with New World. That doesn't necessarily constitute what would be the, what you called the core community, the core player base. So when New World originally launched, obviously we saw almost 1 million concurrent, and people use that number as the driving factor for what is below. But where would you set? What would you set as kind of like, if you look at past the hype of the launch, where would you kind of define that community? Where did that get established?
I think, I mean, I don't want to be rude because let's be like, New World's had a lot of turbulence as it released, but I think if you stuck around post Into the Void when they released the Void Gauntlet, if you were still there and like maybe after Christmas, after the Christmas event, if you were still playing, I would say that you were you were definitely the New World player base.
Yeah.
Because that was, the winter event was actually, I think it was phenomenal, and that was a really great patch. But when they introduced the Void Gauntlet, my God, they broke so much stuff. It was really bad. And if you were able to endure that and keep going, then you clearly enjoyed the game and you were there for the ride. So
yeah, the biggest drop off when you look at because I agree with you, like December, January is what I look at that number, and that's what I hope New World will get back to in that in those numbers, which will be anywhere from 60, 70 plus up to 100 and 140 or something like that. That's kind of the range in my mind that I'm looking at in terms of kind of our big cap. But when you look at that, like if February came, and that's where we saw our actual biggest dip, and there was also a lot of really big games that came out at that time. So it was always a question of New World inviting players back in. How do you invite players back in? But now we are seeing that. We're seeing them invite players back in, and the numbers I think are like fantastic. And then we have a couple of events coming up beyond just this week's launch. You have the Fresh Start servers. Do those interest you at all? Is that like, what's your prediction for Fresh Start?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think it's gonna be, if nothing else, just from like the content standpoint, it's gonna be like the race to 60 again, doing some like wars where like people are level 40, but also just like the idea that we get to relive the launch of New World, which I think probably everybody agrees was like a pretty magical time, even if the queues were like insane and there was so many bugs and exploits. It was just fun. But we're not gonna get that same, like it's not going to be the same, like you can try your hardest, but it will never be the exact same thing. But it can be something different and potentially better, because the game is hopefully going to be so much less buggier and so much more optimized, and the questing is going to be so much better, and the way you move around the map, the combat, just the diversity of weapons, like actually getting geared up, and the fact that there is like an end game that doesn't just involve opening chests. Like it's going to be so much more fun, I think, to like relive that again. It's not going to be brand new and like undiscovered territory, but like we know what we're getting in for this time. But I think it's going to be really cool, and I'm mostly excited to see what people think who haven't played, in like 10 months. Like I really, because I assume you see it. People come in and they say like, "Hey man, I've just come in, check out the game. Wow, it's so much better." And like I see that so often, which is it's like nice to see, because so I like over the past like 8 months, I'm used to people being so negative about the game and saying like, "Why are you still playing this game? It's a piece of So to actually see some positivity about the game and people enjoying it, it's refreshing, because I love you.
So what has been the biggest positive changes for you though, outside of the content creation and obviously not being, hated on? Like I got so much hate, and I'm good at getting hate. I'm like, I've got a thick skin, so it doesn't bother me. But it's like, I literally was like, no guys, this is a good game, and it just needs time, like every other MMO ever. Like, like I've been through this so many times that I'm like, whatever. The question is will they keep making the game? And the answer right now is yeah. So for you though, like as a player, what has been the biggest, most positive changes on your enjoyment of the game so far?
I don't like, it feels like it's a really simple thing, but the storage sheds getting all connected was like revolutionary. Like just that alone made the game so much easier to play. And then when you go back and level up a character, like it's going to be great now for fresh start because your storage sheds are all connected. So, and fast travel doesn't cost like an arm and a leg as well. So you can actually just move around the map and pick up what you want from where you want in any area. Inventory on the move is just nice, like a really good quality of life. Man, it feels like I'm embarrassed to like call anything in particular because there's obviously so many things. But pulling stuff like immediately out of my head, you start to take it for granted at some point where you're like, oh yeah, we do just have the storage chest connected now. And you can just, your inventory can open on the move. But when you go back and think about it, like that wasn't the case. Even just the like seeing my greatsword expertise pop up, like what we used to do in the past, we used to open up a spreadsheet and I would track the number, and if the number was higher than I'd ever seen it before, I'd put a number in on my spreadsheet, and I'm like, oh, I got a bump in my watermark there, but now it just appears on the screen. Like, wow.
So and just in your weapons UI, you go actually pull that up. Now you can see all of them. I was like, oh, good. That's a nice little quality of life change. I don't have to equip the weapon.
So just honestly, it's kind of like all those small things like that. You think it would be something big, like, oh, we have the Void Gauntlet, and it's another weapon that scales off of like healing, or even just the Brimstone Sands, like just a massive new wave of content in the Heart Rune. But honestly, for me, I think a lot of it is just those small things that just makes the game like so much nicer to play, because it felt like a lot of the time New World is kind of like fighting you when you're trying to play it. It really, you want to do something, it's like, no, you're not allowed to. You want to do a dungeon? Well, you're going to have to do corrupted breaches for like 3 weeks straight to make one key. Yeah. Now you can just go in and do a dungeon. It's great.
What's New World lacking?
What is New World lacking? I think the way that they do their servers is very problematic. We're seeing it right now. The queues are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Which is cool. It's a sign of hype, but I think people get frustrated at some point. I got disconnected today in my stream, and I went into a 2,000 player queue, and like that's it. That's all right. I'm not gaming for like another hour or two potentially. So I think they really need to figure out some way to get cross-server integration in some way. Like it's vital, I feel like, for the continued life of the game. Like Outpost Rush being cross-server, dungeons being able to do cross-server, some sort of sharding so you can play on different layers. Because before Brimstone came out, I was trying to like go and gather some materials, like get some star metal, get some orichalcum. Every single spot I go to on the map, there's somebody already waiting there. In some cases, there's like 3 people waiting for the resource to respawn, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, dude. Like, how are you supposed to go gather your own materials when like they're so scarce and the map is so like packed? And obviously it's cool that they increased the server cap to 2,500, but people want it to keep going higher. They're like, oh, we should have 5,000 players in a server. And I'm like, dude, we just don't have the map. The way New World plays is not set up for that, and I think they need to change that fundamentally. And then outside of that, there's a lot of other side things, like actually in the game, I think company housing, really leaning into more of the company, like with the way it plays, getting more involved with the company, just activities that you can do together. Maybe like a town project board that is just linked to your company to like raise the company level somehow. So maybe you can invite more people into your company, or you can have certain crests that you can put on your armor that you unlock through company achievements or whatever, killing bosses together. I think more of the social aspect is always great for New World, because I think that's one of the things that it shines from, and they need to build on that more and more and more.
How do you want them to monetize the game?
I think the way they're doing it now, I mean, I don't know like what how they're feeling in terms of, because I'm sure they're not going to say like, oh yeah, we need more money. I listened into the boys talk to Scott Lane the other day. Did you listen to on that one?
Oh, yeah. I freaked out towards the end. Scott wanting native controller support.
Yeah,
which is great. That's my whole thing. I play MMOs on controller. Like that's my bread and butter. But I was happy to hear him also talk about how prioritization, loadouts, controllers, same team, that's who would be working on it. And I kind of feel loadouts should come first. And then because we do have the Steam controller support, so it's not like, oh, we're lacking. But when they bring in that native controller support, oh baby, I think that will be sweet. But yes, I listened to it. It was incredible. I messaged them. I was like, thank you guys so much for asking that question.
and from monetization, like Scott didn't seem to imply that they were like hurting right now or like they're beholden to like make lots of money, which, you know, I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of expect that like with it being Amazon, they're going to be like super profits driven. And if the game isn't making a profit, like they're going to be tightening the screws. But it sounds like from externally, they're doing okay and they're not being forced to like squeeze money out of it. So if the current model of just buying the game, buying skins, and maybe at some point, if they feel like the game's reputation is good enough, like I think right now, even if they wanted to, it would be really risky to try and ask people to buy Brimstone Sands because they just don't have a good reputation behind the game. But if they can repair New World's reputation and people can be like, all right, yeah, I'm happy to put more money into this game and I don't feel like I'm going to get burned because some people, you know, they spent the $40 and they felt like they didn't get a product that was worth it. Now I think they can, but they've got to prove it. Maybe I know a lot of other MMOs, Elder Scrolls Online, you have like a premium sub, right? So you can subscribe additionally each month to get some extra in-game rewards. Though I don't know what those would be because I think that, you know, one thing that I feel like we can all say about New World compared to almost every other MMO out there is it's not pay to win. Like there is nothing you can buy that gives you an advantage in the game other than just, you know, looking goofy.
Remember all the pay to win fear mongering, like algorithmically juicy videos?
Yeah.
Like they're going to add a cash shop. They're going to kill. And then the thing was, the sweetest part was the people who were making those videos were like, oh, Lost Ark, here we go. I'm like, guys, like it's fine if you want to play Lost Ark, but let's just be consistent, you know, like let's have some level of consistency.
Lost Ark's not pay to win because it doesn't give any advantage in PvP. Like PvP is the only content that matters. Yeah.
Oh, good times.
So I just whatever New World do, whatever monetization path they go down, I just hope it doesn't involve pay to win. Like if they do a premium sub and it just gives you like, I don't know, some extra marks of fortune or a skin that is only accessible while you have the premium pass or something. Yeah, I don't know. There's very few things that they can offer, right? Because they can't really offer any extra storage space because I think that's partially pay to win. Or maybe another character slot is okay because I think it's hard to argue how that could give you an in-game advantage having another character slot. I don't know.
I've heard people
see value
argue,
in that, but
I've heard people argue the weirdest. Like I'm talking about bending your back and breaking it in 1,000 ways to try and just say something is pay to win. And that's why it's like gamers have overused that term to the point where I think companies can actually take advantage of players because what does that even mean anymore? You know, like, yeah. So lots of it's a really good buzzword. It's a really good tag to put in a video, but
yeah.
Now, what would you think about a battle pass instead of like an optional sub? Because in a way, a battle pass does act as kind of that optional sub, but it kind of gives you a little bit of content to do at the same time. What do you think?
Yeah, I like battle pass in most games. I think it's pretty cool. The only thing that I don't like about battle passes is they usually play off of the old FOMO, you know, the fear of missing out. Like if you don't, you better log in every day and make sure you do it. Otherwise you're going to miss all the things. And then once it's gone, it's gone. And like, it's just, you know, the pressure to do that.
I hate that. I think
that's one of the great things about New World is it doesn't pressure you to, it doesn't have the stupid daily login bonus and all the little red boxes you got to click and stuff. So if they could do it in a tasteful way, I'm all for it. Cause for me, I like to just, for the longest time in New World, you know, I hit the end game, hit level 60, got max expertise, got what I feel is pretty close to best in slot. I'm still going to work on my trade skills, but at some point, it felt like New World ran out of content, which was going to happen because it didn't have enough. And I had to start coming up with it like, all right, I'm going to try and do this today. You know, I'm going to do Outpost Rush with a life staff and a bow. You know, I started to have to make the content for myself. So if the game can provide the content, obviously that's much more relaxing because if you have to figure out ways to make the game interesting for yourself, I think the game, it's like a bad sign. So battle passes do give you that, you know, they give you a goal, try and do this XYZ every day, you get some amount of XP, then you'll get some skins. I think the only question is what they put in the battle pass because skins and emotes, camp skins, but is there anything else? Like what's like the sort of filler stuff in every other in-between level?
Right. Scott talked about adding in toys. You know, so it's like, and then when you look at kind of the PvP reward track, like maybe there's a couple different things you pick from, you know, in that regards, like it's it's a challenge, right? I think that, like, outside of what you put in it, like, I'm actually not concerned about it. Because if it does introduce FOMO, I think that hurts the game. I think that
Yeah.
hurts the base. One of the things I've just continued to praise New World on is that it is such a relaxing experience. I never feel like they give you things. I could go do 3 faction missions a day for extra rewards if I choose to, but I don't have to. I never feel like I have to log in and I have to do these 5 things or 10 things or whatever to go have fun. Because then
Yeah.
I don't have fun. I always end up just like, okay, I got to go do this. So I don't. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about it, about this game. And so with the battle pass, like, I think the way you avoid FOMO is that you have a different philosophy with MMOs, and you say, you buy this battle pass, you keep this battle pass. Yeah, it's the season of whatever. Maybe you get faster progression on the current season, but
Mm.
every battle pass that you have bought, you can go grind on that on your own terms. Hey, yeah, there's not enough content right now. Okay, well, did you know coming in year 3, there's like a whole collection of battle passes that if you want, you can go grind on those rewards. I think that would be something that could work, could potential. And the key word is could, because we haven't seen anybody really do it. The downside is Halo kind of tried, but Halo right now is such in a bad spot that it's like I hate even referencing it, because ultimately the Halo nerd in me just gets pissed. But it also distracts people, like, oh, Halo sucks. It's like, no. Like, their idea for the battle pass is solid. Their battle
Yeah.
pass implementation is garbage.
Yeah. It's a fine line to walk. You don't want to, like, I don't know, you don't want to force people to feel like they have to log in to play, but you also need to, like, create goals. Otherwise, yeah, you fall into the problem that I had where I'm trying to figure out my own entertainment, and that's, like, not a good spot to be in, because I'll do it as a streamer and content creator, but yeah, I think the average gamer might be just like, I'm gonna go look at something else for now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What kind of, like, weapons do you want to see introduced? Because, like, back to the interview from Studio Loot, they talked about daggers, but then Scott was saying we kind of need another healing weapon, something force based. What do you think?
Yeah, dude, I was relieved when he said that, because I think right now, like, I do a lot of healing in New World. Like, healing is my jam, I
Yeah,
love
right
the
here.
life staff and doing healing builds. I just like playing support in general in a lot of games, setting up other people to do the plays. And we got the Void Gauntlet, but it's not really a healing weapon. Like, it has some access to healing, but trying to just heal with the Void Gauntlet alone, it's pretty rough. I've tried to do it a few times, but it doesn't really work. So something like on par with the life staff that is just like a dedicated healing weapon, I think would be really nice, because most of the MMOs, they have like at least 2 different, there's 2 different tanks, 2 different healers, 2 different DPS, and obviously New World doesn't really have classes per se, but everybody agrees that a healer in New World just has a life staff.
Yeah,
So it would be cool if a healer in New World, like a mage in New World, could be a fire staff and an ice gauntlet, or it could be an ice gauntlet and a blunderbuss potentially, or it could be a fire staff and a void gauntlet. But a healer is just like it's got life staff, like that's it, you know.
yeah.
So a little bit more variety with that would be pretty cool. I know a lot of people want to do the daggers. Daggers is like pretty hype, and I'm sure it's been like accidentally leaked a few times. Daggers, like we've seen them in the game, and they pop up in like New World database in the code sometimes. Like even right now, I think if you search for like Keen, it says you can get it on daggers, which is kind of strange. Even though they said they're not sure which weapon they're gonna do next. But yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like if it's good for the game and if it's what most of the players want, then I'll put aside, I'll selfishly or unselfishly say, sure, get the weapon that is going to benefit most people. But selfishly, I'd love to see like a healing mace, like a flail,
Ooh,
one-handed mace,
yeah.
or a flail that you can pair with the shield. We go like back to the paladin days again.
Mhm.
Or I think like some sort of we saw this in a trailer a long time ago. It was for like the release of New World. They had these like characters that looked like they were like made of metal or whatever. It was about a minute long. It was called like Champions of New World or something like that. And in one of the scenes, there's a guy, there's like a corrupted portal up the top of the stairs, and a priest, and the priest is like casting some like red corruption bolt at him, and he has a spell book, like a tome in his hand, and he pulls his hand across the tome and then casts some sort of like arcane shield magic.
Yeah.
And if that is like a setup for like something like that, if we get like an arcane spell book that revolves around like shielding your teammates and stuff and preventing damage, because I know that's like another classic way that people do healers in MMOs. I'd love that too. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I like mitigation healing. I love that aspect. I personally would mind, and this is kind of stealing from 14, is the scholar has a pet fairy that will put out little healing as well. And it's like, I'd love a pet class. I'd love something in that those names. But you're right. Like when you were talking, I was like, absolutely, I'd love to see a book be able to be brought in and then as a weapon. And then I think essentially the kind of the dream though, because we're kind of used to right now after launch getting one new weapon, every, we'll just say average 4 months, ish. But if they go with a paid expansion, I know Brimstone Sands people have labeled it an expansion. It expands the world, but it's not what I would consider like a box expansion, like in the days of old. But imagine if we got something that massive where instead of one zone, you got a couple of new zones. Instead of one weapon, you got a couple of new weapons. Gives everybody what they want. So you don't end up having, if we get another healing weapon, we don't have the daggering, the people who are waiting for daggers upset. Oh, I've been waiting for daggers. I thought it was, because assumptions are the death nail. People assume things, and that's the ball game. They set expectations, and there's nothing we can do. I've tried. It only just frustrates them to try and mitigate those expectations. Yeah, but I think it'd be really cool to have that kind of an option. Would you want to see a paid expansion, or do you want to see them go the No Man's Sky, where it's just updates? We're just keep rolling out those updates.
I mean, I think the game's more accessible if they just let I think the game's more accessible if they just let people you buy it once and then that's it. I think that's a really what's the word, appealing business model. Like you own the copy and then you get all the content that will be. So I think that's better for the game. But if Amazon think it's if it's gonna appeal the execs and just lead to like them being able to hire as many people as they want and have all the resources they want for like paid expansions, then, and especially it would have to warrant it, like you say, it would have to be like a really big piece of content. But yeah, what do you think about? Is it like a question for you? Right. What do you think about the way that we currently have weapons coming into the game? Like this year, we've had Blunderbuss in the spring and Greatsword now, and I don't know if we're going to see another weapon before the end of the year. So potentially it's only going to be 2 weapons this year. Do you think going forward that pace is too slow, too fast? Like what do you think like for rate of weapons coming into the game?
I think it feels good. Like at the end of the day, when you start to factor in how an individual weapon totally can change the sandbox, it changes people's builds. Yeah, like I want them to really think through that weapon. As I'm a software engineer, I work on these kind of things, and it's like the amount of work that goes into these things, animations and all that, like it's substantial. I don't want them to rush that. I want them, especially with how we kind of saw them launch and just kind of like panic and start throwing out updates and making things a little bit, like Scott says, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. No. Like if they can have some kind of pace where we're getting 2 weapons a year, that's amazing. Like if we only got 1 weapon a year, I still think that's a really good thing because it can get people excited. I get excited for the new weapons. It adds a whole new play style. What you don't want to see is that a weapon gets added and it's literally just the same as every weapon out there. Like, oh, this is a copy of whatever just for leveling. And so I think more than anything else beyond the weapon and the pace of the weapons being added, I would love to see more added to the progression around weapons. So if you think of like how they cap at 20, I want at 20 some kind of aptitude system that continues on after that. Like I hate when XP hits the floor. If anybody's ever heard my podcast and my rants, it's like as soon as XP becomes worthless, I get frustrated. And if they could do that, like that would be something that I would actually appreciate more. Give me like, let me go and master and beyond master that weapon. That would be something personally enjoyable to me. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think weapons need, when they come into the game, they need to be like a big deal. You can't just like drop it in, every other week or even every month. I think they should be like, I don't know. I think 3 a year is probably, I don't know. Between 2 and 3, I think is a good number to go for. I do also think there is a problem that New World will eventually face where you have too many weapons. and I don't know how they're going to tackle that one, because even just like from like I'm experiencing it right now with the greatsword. It's actually kind of hard to get the greatsword expertise to go up because there's so many different weapons that drop. Just getting the greatsword to drop, so I have a chance at an expertise bump. It's a bit tough. You can make the gypsum cast and everything else.
But what would solve that in my mind is that the more you grinded and use the great sword, either increasing the odds of that happening, like you could have a little bit more control over that. And I think the XP system and weapons experience literally would be the perfect solution. Oh, turns out, you keep using the great sword. Maybe there's a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. Aptitude levels for weapons could even potentially go into expertise in some way.
Exactly.
That could be kind of cool. Yeah.
I think it gives another pathway, and it doesn't need to be efficient. Like I'm never advocating that XP is the efficient way. It could be the literal slowest way on earth. But it's still there, and it shows you that little progress a little bit, and it gets me. I always end up playing a little bit longer if I'm like 75% of a level. I always have to kind of finish off that level, and so maybe that's just my addictive personality. Now, would you want to see them separate like the sword and the shield, so that essentially from a weapons loadout perspective, you actually have more options in terms of how you build out your class?
It's tricky. I think the sword and shield's pretty iconic for what it does. It's like the quintessential tanking sort of thing in New World right now. But I do think like sword and hatchet, shield and hatchet, meant sword and hatchet. That'd be pretty nuts. Shield and hatchet and shield and spear and stuff would be cool. But I almost feel like that would probably have to come in with like almost like an expansion in and of itself, because they have to create so many different combat mechanics. And would the skill tree then look different? All the animations that they have to redo as well. I mean, if we're just talking like theoretically, would I like to see that? Yeah, for sure. Even if there was some way to like hold a shield and life staff, that'd be pretty fun.
Oh hell yeah.
Tower shield life staff. Yeah. Just get behind me, everybody, and then you hold up the shield and drop the sacred ground.
And you can stun and then get that cure off. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard even you and Slender talking about just dual wielding shields. It'd be very just smashing them like that.
All shields all day long, just throwing them.
You could see Danny send Danny in like that, double shield Danny with his 500 constitution.
that'd be insanely wild.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things, like New World's strengths is the fact that you can mix and match so many different weapons. And in theory, there's supposed to be like a multitude of viable different builds. You could, nothing stopping you from putting like the spear with the ice gauntlet if you wanted to. It's going to be hard to make it work. But the more that they can potentially do that, I think there is a point where they go too far. Like and it becomes really hard to balance. Like World of Warcraft, you kind of saw that with when they introduced the covenants, where you have like so many different moving parts, because you've got your classes, and then the classes have the specs, and then the specs have the 4 different covenants as well, like the Night Fae and the Venthyr, and then it's just like there's so many moving parts that like it's almost impossible to sort of iterate and improve. So I think they got to be careful if they open up the shield to work with everything, because you'll have like light, medium, and heavy. And then you'll have your different stat attributions, and then you have your different weapons that pair together as well. And then you'll have your rune glass gems, and then have your way their heart runes work with that. And
they'd have to implement some kind of disadvantage, right? Like balance in my mind comes at not that everything's equal, it's that everything has a strength and a weakness. So if you end up choosing that, then there should be some kind of disadvantage that you're choosing to take on because you feel the advantages outweigh whatever that disadvantage is. But it's a hard thing to balance. Like, do you assign points to each weapon, and thus you're saying like your total weapon loadout points can't be this and this paired or something? I don't know, because ultimately that would because right now sword and shield is they're 2 slots, but we don't really have left hand, right hand, for example, and that's where you kind of would have to go with it. But that could be interesting too, because then you start thinking about how in Brimstone they changed the walking through water animation, so that it's these little touches that make me really appreciate what the devs are actually doing. And that's one of the things I don't think gets enough praise. It's like all these things that we're talking about are all excellent and exciting. And there's things that are happening behind the scenes that are really cool. And I can't wait for them to drop that. I'm assuming that news on us next week. But here we are. And it's like you start looking at these little things, that the fact that they paid somebody to take time to do that, when it doesn't really like, it's not going to be like, guys, this is what it is. And it's when I notice those little things, just like the fact they brought in musical instruments and we didn't know about that, it was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, like you didn't
Wasn't
have to
even on
do
the
that.
roadmap.
Right, exactly. And that's where all of a sudden it's like these guys are having fun. Because
Yeah.
that's like, what would make this work a little better? And so I started to look at that. Now, I don't normally do this, but normally we don't get super chats here on the stream. Ben with a $5 super chat says the possibilities are endless. So thank you for that, Ben. And then thank you, YouTube Lurker, for 4 months of membership here on the channel. So thanks, guys, for those the support notifications. But I was asked to ask you a question, and so here it is. What is an MMO to you?
Well, it's a massive multiplayer online, Jack. I mean, come on. An MMO for me is, I think, a classic MMO. You start off at level 1. You probably have a couple of different starting zones with a sort of character class role thing that you choose at the start, and you can have your own backstory for whatever. You level up through a variety of different zones, and then you hit the level cap, and that, for me, there's an end game at that point of like gearing and doing progressively harder content, usually that's group orientated. And I think that for me is like that's what I'm looking for in an MMO. And New World does twist do some variations on that, which I think is interesting because I still enjoy it. But yeah, hopefully that's like a good way to answer the question.
Anyway is always interesting to see where people come from. What's your MMO background? So before New World, that's how I discovered you. So forgive my ignorance, but what got you playing MMOs in the first place, and what have you played?
The MMO that I spent the most amount of time playing, maybe no surprises here being Baggins, is Lord of the Rings Online. I spent many years playing Lord of the Rings Online. I think I started playing in 2010. It was just before it went free to play. So while everyone was playing World of Warcraft, I was playing Lord of the Rings Online. Like in some time period between then and New World, I played Rift as well. I played quite a bit of Rift. I've also played a few MMOs with my wife, with Gamgee. We played what's it called? Dude, it's like it's similar sort of like style to New World, but it's top down. I can't remember what it's called, but it's been around for a while. God, I can't think of the name of it at all now. I also played
Albion Online.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we played Albion Online a little bit, but not much of that. Maybe like 100 hours at most. I played quite a bit of Guild Wars 2 when that came out. Really enjoyed Guild Wars 2. I played a Mesma, and also a Guardian as well. I think it was called the Guardian, right? The tanky, healy, paladin sort of cleric guy. And then before that, I think one of the first MMOs that I actually remember playing, it was really bizarre. It was a Korean MMORPG called Repels.
Okay.
Where you had pets. Everybody had a pet that would like help them in combat and stuff. And I don't even know how I got into that game. I was pretty young when I started playing that. Because it was like the only thing that I could play on like the family computer back then.
What features would you like to see brought over from Guild Wars 2 for New World? Because Guild Wars 2, despite the fact I don't play it much, it's so good.
Yeah,
like they did a lot of things right.
Yeah, for sure. I think the way that they like the questing and just like you can hop in and do anything at any time, like the scaling and like being in any zone and just being like appropriate for the questing there is pretty damn awesome. Just makes it really easy to go in and play with your friends, Like if somebody was to come join me on the server and I could just like I could go help them with a quest without being like too overpowered, just scale down to go join them. I think that's awesome. Also, Guild Wars like World v World, like the PvP is like pretty epic. I think that's one thing that like New World wants to have, but it doesn't quite do it that good. If and I don't want to be rude, but I feel like wars should be really epic, but they're not quite there yet. 50 versus 50, but let's be honest, like most people don't get to take part in it. Yeah. It can often be pretty one-sided as well. Up until like recently, the wars have been, they've been plagued with a lot of lag and stuff. And I think it's much better now that they're instance. But yeah, I still feel like big combat in New World, like big world, like huge combat, open world fights. They don't happen very often. Open world PvP doesn't happen very often. And it's usually not like there's been a few epic moments and it is fun, but I think like more ways to entice that or encourage that, like you do have World v World in Guildhall that'd be great for New World.
So yeah, I completely agree. My solution was when you actually looked at how it happened, like everybody was talking about how exciting it was when the PvP reward track dropped, because that actually put everybody who wanted to PvP actually all in the same zone, because that was the most efficient. They eventually patched it out, but the ultimate thing is like, I hope that they learn that lesson and make a rotating hot zone, or whatever. So it's like double rewards and here's all this stuff and whatever. And it's like every week, because I like how things change, right? Like if you just said this one zone is always going to be a open world PvP world zone, that's where you go. Eventually it's going to get stale. You're like, all right, PvP does have a variety to it, but if they took this beautiful world with all the different zones, and it's like this week we're in First Light, next week we're in Shattered Mountain, and then it's like every week it's always different. They got, just like how we have Hell, we got Starstone mutated. I'm so freaking excited, like as they continue to work backwards. But it's like the fact that those things rotate just gives that extra amount of variety to the offerings. And I think variety helps us keep things fresh.
Yeah, for sure. It's one thing a long time ago in the history of New World, like New World Alpha, you used to have these areas called lawless zones. So Murkgard was on, and interestingly enough, Weaver's Fen was also one as well. It was like it was a lawless town. So when you went in there, you were just automatically flagged for PvP. And if you went in there, you were just sort of, you had to keep your eye on everybody else that was around. And it was also like full loot PvP as well. So if somebody would kill you, it'd be pretty rough. But yeah, I think having them be static, I do agree, it would get stale. So like even just starting an area in the Brimstone Sands is like a test, sort of like what Great Cleave was for the time when it was the go-to method for like farming, having like a wild sand zone somewhere in Brimstone that like when you move into the area you are automatically PvP flagged. I think one thing that's you got to be careful though is you can't make it too lucrative to be in there, at least in a sense of like you don't want to fill it with like tons of nodes of like orichalcum and stuff like that, because it just feels like it's going to be unfair to people who don't want to engage in PvP but they still they want to craft and they want to gather. But if you feel like you force them to go into this zone because it's just filled with so many materials that they're missing out if they don't go in there, so they have to engage in PvP even though they really don't want to, I think you got to be careful there. You got to cater to everyone's playstyle without them forcing them to do something. Like suggest it to them, but don't make it feel like they absolutely have to do that.
Well, and that breaks the thing I like about New World. It's like, because if it's becomes mandatory, then you kind of I think lose interest pretty quickly, because then it feels like a job and not like this place you're just getting lost in. And that's the thing that keeps me coming back every day. Like this week, I'm going to post a video on it, but this week 14 had its big update in New World. And I'm sitting here going like, but I want to play New World. That's where I want to be. And unfortunately I got sick this week and I had a lot of family stuff that I needed to kind of help focus on. So I was like, I haven't really got to play Brimstone at all. And I'm so excited because I got to do that tomorrow. It's my game night. So I'm like, heck yeah. So talk to me about your experience with New World, like especially with Brimstone. The content's out. This has been something we've been hyped about for a long time, pretty much since the roadmap, because it's like we even saw leaked stuff when the game launched of Brimstone. So how is the experience now that it's here for you?
It's been pretty awesome. I think the first day, and this usually happens like when I first get in, because I'm usually streaming at the same time. I get like a little bit stressed almost, because it's like, oh, all right, we want to check out the skins, but I also want to go see if Starstone's actually mutated, but I want to go make the rune glass gems, but I want to make my heart rune, but I want to get a great sword, I want to level up the great sword, but I want to go do the main storyline, but I want to go check out the quest, I want to go get the glyphs. And it's like, oh my god, I just have to focus on one thing and do it. And it's definitely like not a problem, because having too much to do is better than not having enough to do. But it has actually been like challenging to just be like, all right, today we're going to do this thing and I'm going to focus on this thing. So like in the first day, I was like, all right, I'm going to get my heart rune. I'm going to max it out because I think that's important for like multiple different forms of content. And it's also cool to like show it off. And then on the second day, I was like, all right, I'm going to focus on finishing the main storyline now, and getting some like great sword mastery going. And then today I was like, all right, today I'm going to focus on getting some rune glass gems and just working my way through that. But it's so refreshing to have like goals again, and stuff to do, because the content does like dry up because they have been like perpetually playing this catch up game for a while, because it felt like the game released without really everything that they wanted in there, released before it was really ready for release. But now, yeah, it's feeling really good. There's a lot of stuff to do. I've still got like so many more things that I want to do on my list. Like tomorrow, I'm gonna do more Runeglass gems. I want to push through the Ennead. Like I've only done like one run of the Ennead so far. I want to do mutated Ennead, and then we know that we've got mutated Starstone coming up as well. I think it was like accidentally turned on, but it wasn't really. So, yeah, knowing that that's coming up is going to be super fun.
Heck
and
yeah,
I want to go. Yeah, it's cool, man. I'm hyped. I'm really enjoying it. Really, really, I'm enjoying it.
I want to get to Kay's question in chat, but what's your favorite dungeon, or excuse me, expo dungeon, in New World?
I really do like the Ennead. The boss fights are super cool in it. I think it has the best boss fights, but overall, from like visuals to boss fights to the sound and just everything, I think Dynasty Shipyard is probably my favorite, because it's pretty cool. Feels pretty special in there. I think the boss fights are cool. It's like also the length of it, because Tempest Heart is like visually amazing, but like the third, fourth, fifth time you do it, you're kind of like, all right, come on, we're still going. Okay, we get the Void Destroyers. Yeah, get rid of the Void Destroyers. Oh, we gotta fight Isabella like the sixth time. Like, I get it. So yeah, Tempest Heart, probably like first time round, Tempest Heart is the best, but overall, like in terms of replayability and everything, I like Dynasty Shipyard the most. How about you? What do you think is Starstone?
I've been waiting for it. Once they did the depths, I was like, oh yeah, they're going backwards. We're going to get all of them. And that's all of a sudden like, yes, now you'll always have, even when you're playing through it, these are also still viable as a part of that system. I assume that as they continue to add them, and as we continue to like mutate, obviously Amarine or something, that eventually we'll see like 3 mutations a week or something, like they'll step that up, because then at some point you're like, I haven't seen this one expedition mutated in 2 months, if they continue on
waiting
this
for
track.
it to hit the cycle. Yeah,
exactly. Kay asked though, what point of interests have been the most fun for you in Brimstone?
I think it's like fun, but it's also annoying at the same time. So the elite points of interest, it's cool that they have those glyphs, though, like the glyph chests in them. Because I really like the idea that they reward open world exploration. You go discover the glyphs, and then you can open up special chests that, if you don't have the glyphs, you couldn't do that. And a lot of them are put in those elite areas. I think, although my favorite point of interest out of all of them, though, I don't want to do like spoilers like for anybody, so maybe just like a spoiler warning. But there's a place up in the top of the map, and the main storyline takes it to you. It's called the Place of Pillars, and what they've done is they've created this jumping puzzle with pillars, funny enough, and they've put goats on top of the pillars that have a special affix on them called Pushy. And usually what goats do is when they run up to you, they headbutt you and then they run away because they're just big jerks. But Pushy means they headbutt you and then they headbutt you and then they headbutt you and they just keep going. So the fact that they put goats on top of these high places that will continue to knock you off down to the ground, so you have to jump back up and climb again. And then right at the end, when you're trying to get the glyph, they put this king goat here that has like, 10 times the normal HP. I think it's hilarious. I know they're having fun doing that sort of stuff, and I love it. I appreciate that sort of like joke that they're pulling, and it's just goofy, and I find it so much fun. So yeah, that's probably my favorite POI is the Place of Pillars.
That's really cool. I haven't got to that yet because I only spend a little time on the PTR because I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I tested it what I wanted, and then now I'm just waiting for it to go live. It feels like this build actually it's a whole new build. Like when it comes to the client, it feels like it runs so much smoother, and that's one of the things I think when we look at the last couple of days, like it is so far outside. You got kicked out once, but you overall the experience with the with the game much better, would you say?
Yeah, I think the only criticism that I have, and it is like a bit of a, again, I don't want to be too negative because I feel like if you want a negative opinion on New World, like just they're all over the internet. Try and keep positive. But one thing that's a little bit disheartening is the fact that in most of the quests that you do in Brimstone Sands, at least on our server, because it's very busy, you are waiting in an area for a mob to respawn with at least like 10 to 15 other people waiting there as well. And sometimes you don't get the tag on the mob and you have to wait another 5 to 10 minutes for it to respawn. And that is just like, it's like launch all over again. And I just thought we would have learned from this mistake and like implement some sort of system that if there's a set number of people in the area, the mob respawns faster or something like that. Because I know if it respawns like instantly, it's you can exploit it for like lots of drops or XP or something like that. But yeah, it's been pretty frustrating to just go through a lot of the questing and just be like bottlenecked time and time again because I'm waiting for a mob to respawn and like 10 to 20 other people are also waiting for it as well. It's not fun.
Yeah.
It slows the whole game down, and it
does.
And it feels embarrassing to be like, people come in and they haven't seen the game for 10 months and it's like we still have that same problem that we had from release where we're just waiting for a mob to respawn for the quest to continue to progress. That's the only negative. So there we go. Get it out of the way. But everything else in Brimstone has been great. But that does kind of suck. And I hope that they can look at it before Fresh Start, because I think Fresh Start, it's going to be so many eyes on it. It's the spotlight on New World again. And as rough as it is, they have to be as perfect as possible. They really have to be perfect. And it sucks, man. I do not like, I thought for a while that I was going to go into game dev. I studied it in university for 3 years, did animation. And I was going to go into game dev, and I somehow managed to get a career just playing games instead. And I am not, like looking at it, I'm sure if I was a game dev version of me looking at me in this universe, I would be pretty jealous because, man, I feel like being a game dev is going to be pretty miserable all of the time because you can work really, really hard. But if you get just a little bit wrong, God, people are critical and they will just move on to another game like so quickly. So, I feel for Amazon. I know it's like not easy and they have because they have to get everything perfect, but it is just the small things like that really will rub people the wrong way. So,
yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that 100%. It's funny how the internet absolutely being just easily leaning into that critical component. I wish they would just scale the mob's HP up for the people in the area. Like the algorithm I would write would say how many people in this area on that quest, and then it's like, oh, I see that there's 10 people here, let's just give it 10 times the hit points so everybody's at least getting the ability to register the kill, because when it pops up and it's dead and you're like, all right, I'm gonna sit around and wait again, like,
yeah, I think Bless Unleashed, I played that like a little while ago. I don't know if it's been shut down now, but that was actually one thing that I could say about it was they were really good at doing that sort of stuff. The more people in the area would scale up the mob's health. So just to make sure that everybody could get a tag and be involved, which was pretty good.
Yeah, that's where I was like, that's the feedback I gave, but that's a bigger kind of system because you kind of have to have like, detection of people in the area, detection if they're on the quest, because ultimately you wouldn't want somebody just running through and a guy who's solo, all of a sudden it's like, guys, can y'all leave? Because I can't kill this thing and you're not helping me. So
yeah, and there's got to be that one guy that's like trolling. He's figured out some way to like dupe the system, and he's just like running in and out of the boundary of where it detects and like increasing its health by like 5% every time by just going boop 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 just to troll everybody. Something like that would totally happen, I'm sure.
Now, Raiden in chat is asking about the game running on Steam Deck. It kind of does, and it kind of doesn't. If you, it depends on your Wi-Fi. You can run it on a hotspot, so there's still work to be done. I would recommend using a service like GeForce Now and running GeForce Now on your deck, and then playing New World through that connection, because then you get better battery life and you don't have to worry about all the little hoops. But that would just be my advice if you run into issues. Now it runs on my deck. Just don't load into a town because sometimes it will randomly crash it. So we're getting there. And with native controller support, it'll end up going a long way. But I do have a controller guide out there, Raiden, if you are needing that. Beach Bum says, what is the best advice you would give someone coming back and starting fresh?
I think, like people get carried away, myself included. It's like, oh, just level up fast, do this, get to the end game. But really, it is just about enjoying it, just playing at your own pace. I think one thing that like is often undervalued, and it really depends whether you enjoy it or not, is just gathering stuff along the way. Because I heard you talking to Slender about this, but by gathering materials, you have stuff in your inventory and your storage sheds. Now that you have access to all your storage sheds from Weather, you can just chuck stuff into them, and you never know, they might be useful later on. And at the very least, they'll have a gold value, and gold is power in New World because you can pretty much buy everything with gold off of other players. So gather as much as you can while you're leveling up, but don't let it like interfere with your fun. Don't feel like, oh, all right, I want to do this quest, but I see something over there, and Baggins said I should gather it, so I should go gather it. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. While New World rewards you, and it's part of the gameplay. Like people often say it's a walking simulator, but part of New World's gameplay loop is to be going from A to B and just see a bunch of stuff along the way and just get lost in it. Go run off road and go gather that iron. Go get the the hemp so you can level up, and then you can get the what's the one before wire fiber. You have silkweed. There we go.
Yeah, silkweed. Yeah. I always say New World's end game begins at level 1. If you have that, like the WoW player, that's my mindset, is that the WoW player this is a walking simulator, because I have to go from A to B to C, and they forget what's all going on here, and they get tunnel vision. That's why I actually like the New World doesn't have a mini map, because it allows you to get lost in the world. When I turned off mini maps in other games because of New World, because I was like, I don't need them. I keep looking at them, and I stopped looking at the game. Let me turn that off and force myself to play this way. And it's way more enjoyable because it allows you to get lost in the game. And so if you don't have the mindset that the end game's at level 60, if you have the mindset it starts at level 1, you have a whole different experience because you're not rushing. It took me 4 months to get to cap because I was fishing and gathering, and I was having fun, and I was having fun the whole way. And then I hit 60, and that's when the game sucked because XP lost its value. Like, if they kept XP at some progression, some little bit, oh dude, it'd probably be dangerous. I'd probably be playing right now. Like, screw podcasting. Guys, I'm gonna see I'm gonna get as high as I can.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about mounts? Because we know mounts and loadouts and these big ticket items are on the way. How do you want to see that implemented?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about this as well, because it's pretty hot. It's a hot ticket, it's a hot topic. People would always come in and into chat and stuff, or I see it in the comments on Twitter and stuff, and be like, "Have they added mounts yet? Mounts in the game? Have they added mounts? Swimming in the game."
Mounts.
And I often describe it as like, New World. You imagine it as like a structure, New World as a building, and from release to now, we have we have a hole in the roof. There's a big crack in the wall. The windows are all smashed. Let's focus on that stuff. Let's make sure we have a sturdy roof. Let's make sure we actually have windows, and that big structural crack in the wall is fixed. But I feel like swimming and mounts is like making sure the color of the doorknob is like aesthetically pleasing, or making sure the windows have curtains next to them. Like, yeah, it's important, but like in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's like the most important thing. Like, I think we really need to focus on the bare bones of like what is going to have the biggest improvement, the biggest bang for your buck in New World. But still, people they want mounts. They just really want mounts. I think a lot of people who want mounts haven't played New World in probably like 6 to 8 months. I really do believe that. I could be wrong. I don't have any evidence that suggests that, but it's my gut feeling. A lot of people who want mounts don't actively play the game, but they've announced that they are going to do them. I think, and my hope would be that when they implement them, it's going to be through content that like brings them in with a purpose, with a meaning. They don't just like chuck them in the game and like, oh, by the way, now there's mounts. It would come in with like a new region, or like some sort of mechanic where stables can now be built inside of towns and they have to be maintained or whatever. And you have to craft horseshoes or whatever. Like a whole sort of system around to support it. Yeah, other than just like them. By the way, there's ponies now, lol, go ride them. Yeah.
I do wonder, because if we'll see mounts as its own casual skill, how we have music and there's a space, like imagine if they added mounts. So the more that you interact and do things with your mounts, you level that up, and maybe it opens up, who knows, like perks and other things that you could do, travel, the ability to like move across the world in different ways. Like mounts and gliding would be epic. I asked you earlier about Guild Wars. Like gliding in this game would be, I don't want flying at all. Like, do not make flying a thing, but there are some really tall points that would be amazing to just jump off of and then kind of navigate or something like that. I think that'd be kick-ass.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you could craft a glider or something, like in Brimstone, especially, there's some really high points you can go up, and then you're pretty cool.
I've jumped off those things. I was like,
that's one of the things that's like super fun in like Breath of the Wild. I love Breath of the Wild. just like jumping off of a tall place and then getting you a little whatever they call it in the game. I think super fun.
The other thing that I would take from Guild Wars would be the longer a PvE enemy is alive, it rewards you bonus experience, because they have that in New World for PvP, but we don't have a use for experience once you're 60. So it's like all of a sudden they did those things, because then that also then incentivizes you to go into the corners of the world that haven't been explored, because there's going to be that chance that you're going to get that additional bonus.
Yeah. So I think, like, I don't know if this is part of the show notes or the way that you wanted the conversation to go, but roadmap. We're gonna get a roadmap. Like,
real soon.
They did say a roadmap in October, and I'm pretty sure mounts are then gonna be on it. What else do you think is gonna be on there? Like, what would you hope is gonna be on there? Because I'm thinking about this. I'm like, what is realistic? What would I like? What are they gonna announce? I really am not sure.
Yeah, I like to think of dev in like 6, 9, 12, and 18 months cycles. So I think essentially the question about the roadmap is how much are they willing to reveal? Now, my personal thing is that it would have been, I think, better suited at the 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
But here we are. It's October. Brimstone's out. Their pattern has been the dev update before the update really focuses in on exactly what we're getting and some more behind the scenes stuff. So that has been their MO. Not surprised. What I want, it actually isn't a feature at all, but they talk about this game as a 10-year, they have a 10-year plan. I don't need it spelled out the next 10 years, but what I would like to see is I'd like to see the roadmap cover the next year of content. You know, what does year 2 look like for New World by the quarter? So it's like you think of the 4 seasons, that's the roadmap, right? But then I want them to also include, here's what we're thinking for year 3. It could be very ethereal, but if they communicate that they're, we're thinking for year 3 this, hell, right now I would say if they could give us some ethereal ideas for up to year 5, what makes it easy as me as a content creator, and I don't know if you agree, is to sit here and when people say, does this game have a future? I can say, well, hell yeah, it does. Now I know it has a future. Like what a lot of people miss a lot of things, because what people do, the flaw in gaming and some gamers analysis, and I'm not throwing shade at different YouTubers. I've called them out, directly on a podcast, just like this podcast. Like, hey, what are you thinking? This is ridiculous. But what it ends up missing is that they do comparison analysis. Hey, EA shut down Anthem, so logically Amazon is going to do that. Like that's no. Like that is a flawed connection. Yes, EA shut down Anthem. Yes, New World is unknown, so you could guess. Like if you're going to bet, I can understand how you come to that conclusion. But then what you start to actually listen to what Amazon is saying, and then the question is that do you believe them or do you not? And if you fall in the believe them category, I don't think gamers really understand what Amazon is doing and what the next couple of years are going to look like for them. Because if they mean what they say, we already know they're working on another MMO. We already know that they're talking about doing more publishing and doing all these things. You got to start asking your question as to why. And then when you get to your why, if your feet don't shake because of the power of this company, like this could be good, this could be bad. I'm not going to promise you that the future is great, but it's like at the end of the day, like if you fall into, do you believe them? And then and then what are they doing? And what are they saying? And what's going on? Then all of a sudden you realize like New World is it's the first guy through the door.
Yeah.
They do this, right? Like they keep supporting this game, whatever their next thing is. When it comes out, like I get to sit down and tell people like, look what they did. Like times got hard and they doubled down and they worked hard and they did it. They got the team, they've got the funding. So those two things mean a lot, And so it's like, that's where I kind of fall in. And I see a lot of people making these comparisons to other studios. Like, oh yeah. So, it's like, that's does not mean, like they're overvaluing that in my mind. What would you want to see from the roadmap?
Yeah, just to touch on what you were saying, I think something that comes up pretty often, or like a notion that's thrown around, is how about they shut it down for like 2 years and then they bring it back up like Final Fantasy, and that only works because Final Fantasy is a really well established IP, right? Yep. Like it is, people know it, people love it, so they'll be willing to come around. But New World is not an established IP. It's yeah, it's brand new. It's Amazon's like
no
first sort of
nostalgia,
real
no
venture.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
And
do
if
this.
if their first like big project that they push out the door is a flop and they give up on it, man, that looks really bad for the studio. So I think they're almost committed to making sure it doesn't fail. They'll do anything to make sure it's a success because it otherwise it would reflect so badly on a industry that they really want to get into. But anyway, yeah.
No, I agree 100%.
Roadmap, what would I like to see? Dude, it's tough, man. Like if I could just like say like anything, you know, like I can put anything on that list there. I mean, I would like to see at least all of next year, you know what's coming into the bag for next year. And I would want it to be another Outpost Rush map. I think we're long overdue at least another map for Outpost Rush. And I feel like that's not too much of a steep request. At least 2 weapons, even if they don't name them, just say like we're gonna have a weapon here and a weapon there. I like this is like a lofty notion, but I think it could be really cool. I heard you guys discussing it on the podcast previously, and it's like some people floating around the idea of like making a boat as a company, like contributing resources to make a boat and then sail it out to either do like island expeditions or whatever, like island trials, whatever it is in Lost Ark, like that sort of concept. But also like you have your company and you put a lot of your company members on the boat and you could fight against like a big Leviathan or a Kraken or something like that, bring back materials from the ocean to the mainland, engage in combat with other people who are on the seas. Like that'd be really cool, but that would have to be like a whole expansion for that. But I think that done well could be like really awesome in New World, and you could still just make sure you don't add swimming in, so if people get knocked overboard they just go straight like a stone right to down the ground and drown.
Imagine that, and wearing all this heavy armor and not being able to swim.
Yeah. And then, you know, outside of that, I think it's stuff that they have talked about. Raids, I think I'd love to see a good old raid, like really challenging PvE. I think it doesn't exist in New World yet. Like the Ennead is pretty tough, the final boss fight. I think it will kick the butt of an uncoordinated group, but just going more in that angle. Yeah, raids, some sort of big epic expansion. It doesn't have to be boats, but something like that, really with a theme behind it that introduces like a ton of new mechanics would be super cool. And I don't know, like I think at some point, like when they do fresh start servers and they do, you know, and Brimstone's been out for a while and everything, and everybody's like, I think what right now what they want to do is get all of the returning players and new players, get them up to 60 and get them into Brimstone to enjoy it. And then once like a good chunk of your player base is at level 60, maybe they can consider doing a level cap increase to 65 or something and doing like another 5 levels on the weapons or whatever, add in like another section on the skill tree for like a, you know, just more expansion, because they've gone out with Brimstone, they've gone horizontally, which I don't mind, but I think a little bit more vertical when the game is ready would be super cool as well.
My only concern with vertical, and it's just because I see this happen a lot, and we see what happened with WoW, is that at some point you can push vertical to where it becomes a burden for people coming into the game. Oh, you got to level up to 120 or 130. So if you establish vertical as your key source of progression without having a decent level of horizontal, like you can have both, but if you push vertical too soon, then ultimately it becomes that they'll have to claw it back. My fear right now with 14 is they claw that back here in a couple of expansions, like, because that's, you see what WoW had to do, because it's like, oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, that doesn't ever feel good. And then ultimately, what does a level mean? Because the other option is that you then have to make it faster. You have to sell boosts. You have to, like, that's the solution that the industry's come up with. So I don't mind if they added a little bit more vertical, but I kind of personally hope that they wait a while to do that. Final Fantasy 11 waited a long while. They eventually, like, they moved it like twice in its lifetime, you know, so I don't know if that's the right pacing, but I've seen a couple of like vertical versus horizontal designs where if you think about New World in a form of acts, so like you could have a couple of expansions and stuff that are a part of Act 1, and then that concludes, and then Act 2 takes over, and then you get that vertical, because in my worldview, vertical actually makes the game smaller, because then all of a sudden, let's say we go to 65 or 70, well then there's only so much content at 65 and 70, and all the other content, if you can't upgrade it, if you can't bring it up, then you end up, you know, kind of like, well, I had 10 dungeons or 14 dungeons, now I have 3, or, you know, whatever.
That's true.
But I'm with you. Like it's hard. It's gonna have to be a fine line to walk. I think Guild Wars does this well with masteries though. Like they continue to give you all these different kinds of progressions that you can work, but without necessarily increasing level cap. I don't know. I don't know. That's just my my 2 cents on that. You want to know something interesting?
Yeah. Sure.
When you brought up 14, a lot of people brought up that they need to do whatever. New World actually feels like it's the full it delivers on what 14 1.0 failed in every aspect. They got the player economy, they have the two weapons like 14, like when you go actually look at like 1.0, like for all of its failings, New World actually succeeded on that system and that design. And so when people were saying that they needed an ARR, like taking the game down and completely remaking it, I was like, you completely missed the point. You also missed that it actually does really these things that 14 tried to do, but didn't succeed at. And then New World is actually succeeding in these areas, especially in the world alone. Like I never saw New World as a completely remake game. I draw so many parallels like in its design from 1.0. Having played 1.0, I left Warhammer Online and I played the 1.0 beta and I stuck around.
Damn, dude. Yeah, I wasn't ever the Final Fantasy 14. My only foray with it was only a couple of years ago. I never was there for like the launch days. Although I do remember watching like some YouTube videos. It was like really early Yogscast videos of them playing Final Fantasy 14. And they had like a little Lalafell that they were fishing with. But yeah, I never was around to play it at that time. Or like never jumped into it.
Gene says, and this will be kind of our last question, says, what do you guys think about more solo dungeon type content?
You want to go first or?
I think a successful MMO has solo content that you can do at endgame. I don't think that's a dungeon. I think I hesitate on opening up less social desires in the game. So I wouldn't want to see solo dungeons ever. Like I want to make sure that there's multiplayer content for a multiplayer game. I like how we have group finder. I don't want matchmaking. I think there's certain levels of quality of life that I take advantage of in other games, but there's a cost to those things. And so I wouldn't mind as a solo player because I play endgame solo, like because endgame starts at level 1. So I'll go in and do whatever I want. And sometimes in organic party forms, I wouldn't mind seeing more things to do out in the open world. I think more open world dungeons would fill that role very nicely. But, and if you want to go challenge a dungeon solo, I would be fully on board for that. But right now, I think dungeons require at least 3 people. So like, I wouldn't be opposed to it as an option, but I would be hesitant on a design decision for it. Because I think I'm playing a massively multiplayer game. And I know that we have seen over the last like 10 years specifically what I call MSOs, massively single player online, where we see kind of that move. And yes, it does bring in more people because not everybody's looking for an MMO. And then I go, there's other games out there. MMOs don't need to, in my mind, appeal to everybody, but I could be wrong. What do you think?
I think for me, I mean, when I was asked what is an MMO, and the end game for me is always like a group content, it's always like more fun and more challenging to get stuff done as a group as it is to do solo. If you want to be challenged in a solo capacity, go play like Elden Ring or something. But with that being said, I'm not against the idea of like 1 or 2 pieces of content that you could do, even if it's like a daily, something that you could clear on your own. One thing that's like interesting, and again, I want to do too many spoilers, so maybe just a potential spoiler warning. In the main storyline, there's a part of it where you go in and you do a thing that they call a soul trial, where you fight a boss, and it's a solo instance. It's only a one-time thing, but you go in and you fight a boss. And you actually get like the UI as if you're entering into an expedition, but it is just a boss fight. So I think that soul trial concept could be pretty cool. If you could repeatedly, like on a daily basis, go in and fight a boss for some rewards or something like that. somewhere in the Brimstone Sands, or like they could add them around the map, and it's a way to get extra umbral shards or gypsum or something like that. I think it's cool. I'm all for that. But yeah, I do
I can
think
get behind that, like in terms of opening up more options for players. But yeah, I always kind of worry because gamers have the ability to optimize the fun, and eventually, like, you make a game so solo that you're like, I never talked to anybody. I thought this was to be a social game, and then you just kind of you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, everybody's just sitting in their own separate little instance, ignoring everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I get like, I'm like, wait a minute, like, I love that about the open world. I love that I see players. I love that in terms of open world content. People like, oh, people just zerg it down. Yeah, maybe once. Like, it's actually always going to be different. Sometimes it's just you. Sometimes it's you and a couple of friends. Sometimes it's you and a whole effing army. Like, you never know if that boss is going to be just melted or if you're going to have to work for it. And that's a variability that makes it fun. That's why I love just parking myself and farming open world bosses. Like, it's just enjoyable. I hope that we see the worm as a world boss or something like that. I think that'd be kind of nice. But
yeah, I agree.
Baggins, where can people find you, man?
Twitch and YouTube, probably the places that are most active. It's /BagginsTV on either of those. Twitch.tv, BagginsTV, YouTube.com /BagginsTV. Yeah. And I'm on Twitter as well, but my tweets are terrible. So
no, I don't get Twitter. Like, I get it in terms of content creation, but outside of that, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing over here. Thanks guys for joining us live. If you're listening to this as an MP3, thanks as well. Also on the live show, thanks for the 37 likes. Thanks to Baggins for taking time out of his day to talk to me within my raspiness, but sounding much better. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the live show. With that, we're going to wrap up. I wish you guys all the very best. Thanks so much for being here. Hopefully we're going to see you in the next live show. We've been doing these live here on Ginger Prime, so be sure to check out the YouTube channel if you're listening to this in an MP3. But guys, until then, and until next time, take care.
Bye.
Boo. Sweet. Oh, thanks guys for being here. Dude, Baggins, yeah, that was awesome, man.
That was good fun, dude.
Yeah, dude. What do you got? What do you got planned for tomorrow?
So after I hop out of here, I gotta get the thumbnail description for a video finished, and I think it's honestly bedtime. And we're gonna wake up tomorrow, and we got some friends coming over. Actually, some moderators from the chat. They're gonna be here over the weekend, but I'm still, gotta do the grind. Gotta get in the Brimstone. So did you say you haven't had a chance to jump in yet because you've been too
I've been sick, and then wife needed help, which she had a project, and so I play Friday nights. Like, so for anybody who's listening and wants to hang out on Twitch, work the game on Twitch Friday, usually at 4 p.m. Central, and then on. And so we do it as a community game night for anybody who's a part of the Discord. So if you're looking for people to hang out and play, that's my game time. So I get to play until I'm tired. And so that's
great. About like, what do you think you're gonna do first? You're gonna do the main story, or you're just gonna let it just take you?
Oh, dude, it's gonna just take. Like, I did log in. I beat the Q boss.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what do I want to do? And then I just got out my fishing rod and I just fished. And it was just so great. Like, I was like, that's how I play. That's how I play the game. Like, it's just, I don't come in with maybe I do have a goal, but I don't come in with like, I have to finish that goal. It's like, I literally log in and see where the world goes. And it could be that people are on and they're like, oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, last week, for example, someone needed to run the depths and they're like, hey, I was like, all right, I'll go with you. Like, the answer, like, I try to have this yes mentality. Hey, you want to come do this? Yeah. And it's like, and then after that, I just continue to fish. So yeah, I'm gonna let it take me. If my voice is back, I need to film some reaction videos and things like that. Cause people have sent me like, I think I'm not going to do all of them, but I have like a queue of 30 videos that people are like, have you seen this video? Have you seen this video? What do you think? What do you think? And it's like, I'll get to it. I just haven't had time. So that's my plan. And then I'm going to play until I'm too tired to actually be live.
Sounds good, dude. Sounds good.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm going to hit end broadcast over here on YouTube. So it's just going to wave itself out as it decides to end. So thanks, chat, for hanging out with us. And we will see you guys